been taking each chapter that we're reading during Read Aloud. And each time we read a West Meadows Detectives chapter, we pick out the characters, we pick out any new settings, we pick out the important events, and we kind of retell what's happened. But now we want to do it in a way that truly makes sense, to where we go from the beginning of the chapter to the end of the chapter, okay? So
you mean like retell every single detail?
So, well, but here's the thing. You don't want to retell every single detail. The reason you don't want to retell every single detail is because we aren't telling the story. We aren't going to just tell the chapter over again. We actually want to learn what's called paraphrasing, okay? So paraphrasing is when you take just a few different parts of the story or the chapter, and you just tell the important stuff, okay? You don't retell the whole thing. So and we're going to kind of interchange. We're going to interchange the word retell and paraphrasing, okay? Because you may hear both words. You're going to hear the word retell, but you're also going to hear the word paraphrase. So when a teacher, or if it's on a test, asks you to retell, okay? When I ask you to retell me something, whether it's a story or a chapter, okay? Whether it's either one, story or a chapter.
Or it could be something about your life or what you did.
So I'm going to write story, or, well, I'm going to write whole story. Whole story, or one chapter. Because do y'all remember how when we were talking about, when we did nonfiction, and we talked about how we have the central idea of the whole story and then just one part. Remember? Whole story in one part. So this is similar to that in the sense that whenever we're doing fiction, sometimes we want to retell the whole story, and sometimes we just want to tell one part. We don't necessarily want to retell the whole thing. We just want one chapter. So the first thing you're going to tell me is who is in the story / chapter. Okay, you're going to tell me who's in the story or the chapter, the characters. So remember, we started with saying, okay, on our Plot Mountain, we started with saying, okay, who are our new characters? Who are the characters that we added? And we said, well, we added Mr. Purple and we added Jordan. And we already knew we had Hurrah and we had Myron and we had Glitch. So out of that list, who was not?
And Mr. Rainer.
Oh, hold on. Out of this list, though, if I told you just to retell chapter 2, which of these characters would you leave out?
There's another character, the teacher. The principal.
Rainer, Myron, Hurrah.
So who would you, look at this list, who would you leave out if I told you just to tell me chapter 2? Who out of this list was not in chapter 2? Katya, who was not in chapter 2?
Hurrah.
No, Hurrah was in chapter 2. Who was not in chapter 2?
Jordan?
Mr. Rainer.
Say it again, Katya. So it was Principal Rainer, right? Principal Rainer was not in chapter 2. So if you were retelling me this chapter 2, if I said, hey, I want you to paraphrase or retell for me the chapter 2 of what happened, if you add Principal Rainer in there, I'm going to say, I don't think so. Principal Rainer wasn't in chapter 2. So you have to make sure you're paying attention to not just who's in the whole story, but who might just be in those specific chapters. Then we want to look at where does the story / chapter take place? Okay, so this would be our setting. So again, if we're talking about chapter 2, just chapter 2, where was the setting of the story? Where did the setting take place? Where did the setting in chapter 2 take place?
It's a carnival place?
Oh, Richard, Brayden, where did it take place? I'm going to start calling on some random people because Walter and Holly are the only ones raising their hands. Where did chapter 2 take place? We just read it. It's in purple, under setting. It's the only one in purple.
The school?
Brayden, where did it take place? It's the only one in purple, under setting.
Wait, what did you say?
Where did chapter 2 take place? What was the setting?
Room 15.
Yeah, room 15.
Thank you, Gabriel. Room 15. Okay. Okay, guys, this is why I said we got to make sure we're paying attention. Okay. So room 15 is where chapter 2 took place. So if you told me, if I asked you to retell me chapter 2, and you told me that it took place in the school garden, is that right? No, it's not, right? They weren't in the school garden. Now they looked at pictures of the school garden, but they weren't actually physically in the school garden, okay? The next thing you're going to tell me is the order of events, okay? So this is where you're either going to be telling me the problem, you're going to be telling me, so you could either be telling me the hook, the problem, the rising actions, falling actions, climax, or even the resolution. Because this is where you're going to get your order of events, is where you're going to get into telling me the events that are taking place in the story. And depending on if you're doing a chapter, you're retelling me just a chapter, or if you're retelling me the whole story, that's going to depend on which of these you're going to be looking at. So, again, let's take chapter 2. Which of these would you be telling me? Would you tell me the hook, the problem, the rising? Oops, I put it. Actions. For just chapter 2. For just chapter 2. What did we look at? For just chapter 2, which did we look at? It's in purple. What did we look at? Walter, what did we look at?
Only the vegetables were damaged. The holes in the garden made it a robbery.
So we looked at the rising actions, right? So for chapter 2, we only looked at the rising actions. We didn't look at anything else.
No, we also looked at the setting and the.
Well, yeah, but remember we already wrote that up top. We're just talking about order of events. We're just talking about order of events, okay? So which one of these you're going to be telling me depends on if you're doing the whole story or just one chapter. All right. So when you are retelling a story, you can use some key words to help you do it. So your key words are going to be first, next, then,
And last.
last,
After.
after, finally,
Later.
What's finally?
like finally they found out who solved the mystery or who committed the mystery.
Who was the culprit?
Yeah, who was the culprit? So it's kind of like a finally they did this, like at the end,
At the end or
later, at the end, in conclusion. Okay.
to conclude.
Yeah, you could say in conclusion. I'm gonna put or to. You could do it either way. Okay, so those are some different words you can use to help you kind of retell your story. So here's the deal when we're retelling or paraphrasing, okay? Because remember, we want to interchange both words because you may see it either way. Let me, hold on. Let me write, I'm gonna write paraphrasing on here. So retell or paraphrasing. So you have both. Okay, so when we're retelling or paraphrasing, okay, I want us to, we're gonna just take chapter 2. And I actually have a little graphic organizer, okay, that I'm gonna fill out. And we're gonna actually then practice this in our journals, but I'm gonna use the graphic organizer first. So what is the title of my story? Someone raise a hand. What's the title of my story? Dimitri, what's the title of my story? Dimitri? West.
Northwest Meadows.
West.
Meadows Detectives.
Detectives. And it's the case of the Barry burglars. So it's West Meadows Detectives, case of the Barry burglars. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. I want us just to look at chapters 1 and 2, because that's all we've read so far. So we're gonna just say, okay, I've asked you, my question is, can you, hold on, let me write it in a different color so then we can see it. Can you retell / paraphrase chapters 1 and 2? That's been my test question that's been asked, okay? That's my question that's been asked. Can you retell / paraphrase chapters 1 and 2? So the first thing I need to do is characters. Who is in the story? Okay, so can y'all help me? Who is in the story? Holly, give me some people. Who is in the story? Give me some characters.
Hurrah.
Hurrah. Okay. Who's my main character?
Myron.
Myron. I always want to write my main characters first. Okay. Then who met them in the garden? Starts with a G.
Jordan.
Okay, Jordan was in class. Okay.
The principal.
Principal. Rainer. Grace, who else?
Glitch.
Glitch. And And one more teacher is Katya.
Mr. Harp.
Oh, Katya.
Mr. Harple.
Mr. Harple. Perfect. Okay. So those are the characters we've been introduced to so far. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little MC by Myron and Hurrah, because they're kind of my main characters in these two chapters. They're my main characters. Even though Glitch was in both chapters technically, Myron and Hurrah are my main characters. Okay, so now I'm going to move to the setting.
Glitch is like in every story too, and Mr.
She is,
Wayne.
but she's not considered a main character. Okay, setting. Give me some settings. I got two big ones. Dimitri, give me one.
Room 15.
Room 15. Katya, give me another one.
The school.
The school garden. Okay. So now I've done my characters and I've done my setting, right? I've said who is in the story/chapter, and I've said where does the story/chapter take place. What's the next thing I need to do? Because I'm retelling chapters 1 and 2. So what do I need to look at next, Walter?
Your order of events and your events or your clues.
I'm looking at my orders of events, right? So the first thing I need to do is I need to put the problem. So I want to know what is the mystery or what happened. So what's the mystery? What happened? What happened? What happened in the story?
There was a big mess in the garden.
Someone smashed all of the, so I actually wrote, look at this. I wrote plants, all of the plants. Do we know, is that true now? Did they smush all the plants?
Not all of them.
They didn't smush all of them. They only smushed the vegetables. So I'm actually going to change my problem a little bit because they only technically smushed the vegetables. So someone smashed the, I'm going to put veggies in the garden. Myron and Hurrah are going to take the case. Okay, so someone smushed the veggies in the garden, and Myron and Hurrah are going to take the case. They're going to try and solve who smashed all of the vegetables in the garden. So for my events/clues, right? We already just got two really good clues. What were my two really good clues? What were my two really good events that they just said happened? Walter, what are my two really good events they said just happened?
Someone made holes in the garden.
Okay, someone made holes in the garden
And someone just smushed all the vegetables.
they only smushed the vegetables, right? So
Yeah, I think I know who it could have been. Could have been Smash because her name's Smash.
could have been, they only smushed the veggies, and there are holes in the garden, making it a robbery. Okay, so now do I need to write a resolution? Do I need to write a resolution?
Yeah, not yet. We haven't done it.
Good, Holly. So no, not yet, right? We haven't done the resolution yet. We don't know the resolution. We're not there yet. That's at the end of the book. So I don't need to write that yet because I don't know it. And it's only asking me to retell chapters 1 and 2, right? My question only says chapters 1 and 2. It doesn't say that I need to do the whole thing. Okay. So now when you take something like this is how you're going to go through and you're going to retell and paraphrase is kind of by taking a graphic organizer or even just taking your notebook and writing down the characters, the setting, the problem, and just getting those really important things out of it, okay? So here's what I want you to do for our independent reading today. For your independent reading, so you may want to get out your reading journal so you can write what we're going to do.
The reading journal is full and I don't have any other one.
Okay, just get a piece of paper for right now and then you can add it to a new journal when you get a new one.
Okay.
Just make sure you don't lose it. So our focus is,
Mrs. Handler, when I do this, my notebook looks like a book.
yes, it does. Open it and write in it. Okay, so our focus is going to be retelling and paraphrasing / paraphrasing. And it's important that we write both words down because I can promise you, you are going to see both. So our main focus that we're going to do, so we're going to retell and paraphrase. So your question you're going to be answering is,
But
can
what if it's not a mystery book?
you, well, it doesn't matter. As long as it's fiction, you can actually still do this. This applies for all fiction.
But what if there's various problems?
So there's only going to be, if you're reading fiction, you're only going to have one main problem.
What if
But
I'm reading
you,
Diary of a Wimpy Kid? That's
well, let me think. Because Diary of a Wimpy Kid, I think, does have a lot of.
Can I go get water because I have hiccups?
Yes. But the only thing is, Walter, you just have to figure out what the one main problem is, and then you have to go through and decide what the one main problem is, and then what just are events or details. The one main problem, Walter, is going to be introduced at the very beginning. So in chapter 1, you're going to get the problem.
there are no chapters.
Are there not?
There are days and months.
Okay. I'm trying to think. I haven't read a Diary of a Wimpy Kid in a hot minute since last year. So I'm trying to think of, I'm trying to remember when they introduced the problem. I want to say it's within like the first 2 or 3 days. They introduce whatever his main problem is going to be.
Okay.
So can you retell chapter 1 of your story? So you're going to be retelling me chapter 1 of whatever book you're going to read. It can be a chapter book. It has to be a chapter book because obviously we're doing chapter 1, so it needs to be a chapter book. But you're going to retell me chapter 1 of a chapter book, whatever chapter book you decide to read. And you should have plenty of time to do this because most chapter 1s are like only 10 pages, which shouldn't take you super long to read. I think our chapter 1 was like 4 pages. So
Do we have to read Westmeadow's Detective?
What, Michael?
Do we have to read Westmeadow's Detective?
No, you can read anything you want as long as it's fiction.
Fiction, but can we read Westmeadow's Detective?
Yes, Yes, Holly, you can go to the bathroom. But it needs
Okay.
to be not Barry Burglar. It can't be the one we just did.
Okay.
You can reread one of the other ones. Okay, so when you retell, I want you looking at characters, setting, oops, I have to put little dots. Characters, setting, and problem. Okay. Your problem is going to be / your order of events, but we're going to write problems.
Do we have
chapter
to do the hook?
What?
Do we have to do the hook?
No, let's just focus on problem today. Let's just focus on finding the problem first. So let's just focus on finding the characters, the setting, and the problem in your story. Because I think if we add the hook, it might be too much. So let's just focus on the character, the setting, and the problem for right now. Because we haven't done this in a little bit. So this is what you need to do. You're going to pick a chapter book. It needs to be fiction. And you're going to tell me the characters, you're going to tell me the setting, and you're going to tell me the problem. Characters, setting, problem.